Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm calling this video my MockReads Choice Book Awards SFF TBR for 2022. I've taken this name from some Jewish Kidlit Book Awards. In fact, there is a one particular book award called the Sidney Taylor Book Awards, named after a prominent Jewish book series from the turn of the 20th century, and they award Jewish Kidlit every year. And apparently it's popular enough in those circles that other people have created the mock Sidney Taylor Awards to award their own books during that time, or, there's overlap. But anyway, that's why I'm taking the word mock to sort of do my own thing when it comes to the GoodReads Choice Awards. Because what happened last year in November is we found out that they eliminated the first round, which was the round where participants could write in awardees. I don't know why GoodReads did it. I assume because it's Amazon and corporate and evil now. Because, that was such a fun thing, for people to really have some sort of involvement, to have the opportunity to write in what they wanted to win every year, at least for the first round before it whittled down in the semifinals, or actually it ballooned in the semifinals and then whittled down in the finals. But now we only have two rounds, an opening round and a closing round, at least if 2022 is the same as 2021. But anyway, all of this whining is to say I've made it a staple in years past to create TBRs for my front list reading. I only do a little bit of front list reading, and then I look forward to voting for them in the first round of the GoodReads Choice Awards. But now that I can't do that, I'll just do it on my own for the MockReads Choice Awards, and I'll surely be putting a blog post up, as I often do, in October about which books are my favorites that were published this past year. So why am I rambling about all of this now in March for something that's going to be happening starting in like October, November? Well, it's because, as I said, I don't read a lot of front lists, so I'm trying to make myself a TBR basically to stick to and hopefully get through in the next few months. And I decided to start with science fiction and fantasy, in part because I think my tastes in those genres align with what might actually make it to the GoodReads Choice Awards for real, so that I'll hopefully have something to vote for. Because again, I won't have read most of the ballot, because I just don't read that much front list. But anyway, I have chosen 9 books to talk about that I hope to get to reading in the next few months, so here we go. I'm going to go in publication order, and I am starting with YA Fantasy. The first book I'm going to talk about is A Far Wilder Magic by Allison Saft, and it came out on March 8th. This is a secondary world fantasy which takes place around, I believe, some sort of fox hunt. And it is based on, I believe, the 1920s in the US. It's a very unusual time for the inspiration for secondary fantasy world, so that's exciting on its own. But admittedly, the real thing that drew me to this book, I didn't know anything about it or the author until, I was doing some research. But the fact is that her main character comes from a group that is coded Jewish. So she is a Jewish main character, in a secondary world. So, not technically, but, that's the inspiration. So I'm very excited for that. I think there's also some coded, like, Irish Americans in this story as well. So we're talking about a time when they were pretty much othered a bit in the US, so it'll be an interesting time, I think. Next, I have Queen's Hope by E.K. Johnston, which is coming out April 5th. This is a Star Wars retelling book. I think, in fact, it is telling the story of Revenge of the Sith from Padme's perspective. I've read one of E.K. Johnston's Padme books in the past. I think she has another one out as well that I haven't read. I feel kind of iffy even putting this on the list because it's technically a corporate book, with Disney commissioning E.K. Johnston to write for them and for the franchise. So I really don't think I would vote for it just because it's not original enough. But I do really like that character, and controversially, I am a fan of the prequel series, warts and all. Plus, I have to say these types of books are really fun to listen to on audio because, it's Disney, so they have the rights to put in all the Star Wars music, so that makes it fun. And finally, on May 17th, I have Wind Daughter by Joanna Ruth Meyer, which, in fact, I put on my anticipated reads video back in January. This book is the sequel to Echo North, which came out a couple of years ago. It's a fairy tale retelling, and of all of Meyers' books, I believe it is her most popular. And disclaimer time, I had brief interactions with Joanna Ruth Meyer way back in the day before she published any books in a NaNoWriMo Vidler community, and I was just so taken with her, her drive for her writer journey that I followed her career. And she has since published, Wind Daughter will be her 5th book in that many years. So I'm excited to stay on the train and see where she goes with this one. Moving on to adult fantasy, this is largely the purview of sequels territory. It's a great way to build up a reading list, I suppose, when you're looking for what's out there. So I'll start with another book that was on my anticipated reads video, The Thousand Eyes by A.K. Larkwood, which came out on February 15th. It is the second book in the Serpent Gates series and a sequel to The Unspoken Name. This is an epic fantasy secondary world setting with humanoid creatures and pernicious gods and various religions, and there's a sapphic romance in it. I think I'm keeping some of the details vague, partially out of, not wanting to spoil you, but also partially out of not being quite up on it anymore. I suppose I should, get a bit of a refresher before I move into book 2. But I remember being impressed. I thought that this was a pretty unique take on the epic fantasy tropes. Also from February 15th is the start of a new series with Age of Ash by Daniel Abraham, which I believe is book 1 in Kithamar, I think is how you pronounce that. I came to this because Daniel Abraham is one part of the two-parter who writes the Expanse series in sci-fi, a series that if you have been following me on BookTube, you probably know that I've been quite obsessed with, and have enough good faith in those writers and what's going on that I wanted to give Abraham a try as he moved back into solo writing and into the fantasy world. This is another epic fantasy series. I am also partial to epic fantasies and secondary worlds. This one I believe takes place in a city setting, and there's a thief and a friend, and we're following them, I believe. I don't have to know too many details. I believe Thomas at SFF 180 recently reviewed this book, found it decently good, which is enough for me. And finally, on August 16th, we will get the Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri, or at least I hope we will, which is the second book in the Burning Kingdom series and a sequel to The Jasmine Throne, which I read last year when it came out. This is another secondary world, this time inspired by Indian myths. We have a occupation sort of situation with a brutal empire run by this dictatorial emperor. His sister is trying to take the reins from him, and she is involved with this deposed priestess from, the underclass, and there is indeed another sapphic relationship going on in this. I don't think I was as taken with this book as a lot of people were. It was a very popular first book, but I'm invested enough that I want to keep going with the series, and I'll be giving it my hopeful thumbs up for the sophomore novel. And I'm definitely cautiously optimistic. I mean, surely staying with the series will keep me as invested or even more invested in it anyway, so. Speaking of seeing book series as up through the end, I will go now to adult science fiction, and the first book I'll be talking about is Leviathan Falls by James S. A. Corey. This is the aforementioned Expanse books, and this in fact is the conclusion of the Expanse books, book 9 of the series, by Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. This book in fact came out last year on November 30th, but as per GoodReads Choice Awards parameters, it falls under the purview of this year's GCA. So I'm pretty sure that it will be making the science fiction, opening list. And I'm also pretty sure that I'm going to be voting for it. I guess I shouldn't be too cocky about that, because after all, I am going to read 2 other books that I have high hopes for. But my love for The Expanse runs deep, what can I say? Just to give a little bit of a preview of the overall series, it takes place in the 24th century. Humans have colonized Earth in the asteroid belt, and we come across some alien technology on a moon orbiting Saturn, which changes the course of human history in a lot of ways, as we have our first alien contact, which we see through a variety of perspectives in a really deeply fleshed out world, which is very invested in hard science that makes sense, but also in socioeconomics and well-defined cultures and clashes and so forth. It's a really impressive series, and I thought it made a really impressive TV show as well. But I am, in fact, looking forward to some other science fiction books this year as well, starting with Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel, which is coming out April 5th. I admit that Emily St. John Mandel is another author that I am very taken with, particularly because of her, breakout book, Station 11, which also got an adaptation recently, which I am currently in the middle of watching. This book, I believe, will be a standalone. It takes place in a few different timelines following various narrators. But of course, there's supposed to be an overarching thread, to bind these storylines together as well. And I think it'll say something about the current moment, which I think about a lot with Emily St. John Mandel anyway, because she wrote a pandemic novel before the pandemic hit. So what she wrote during the actual pandemic that we went through, that'll be very enticing on its own. And finally, finally this time, I have A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers, which comes out on July 12th. It is the sequel novella to this novella, A Psalm for the Wild-Built, which came out last year. This is hope punk science fiction, taking place, I guess, in a secondary world, you would call it, as well, where a tea monk and a robot find common ground together in a world where their two peoples have been separated for a long time, and human beings have learned to live in a society without the use of machines or, complicated machines, because said machines grew sentient and no longer wanted to be in a subservient position. But in these novellas, cultures are coming back together, or at least individuals within them are, to try to find common meaning and purpose again. So it's not as flashy or maybe even as complicated as a lot of the science fiction that's big and popular, or that I personally gravitate toward, but Becky Chambers hits my sweet spot with trying to go for some unbridled hope. So I'm hoping for the best. So that about covers it for me now. You can find the GoodReads links for all of the books I mentioned listed down below. I'm heading into the weekend here, and in fact, the day this video goes up, I'm expecting to see my dad and my aunts. My aunts are coming in from Kansas. I'm seeing them for the first time in person since COVID. Just in time for cherry blossom season in DC. They're very excited to be there in time for the peak season, hopefully before the blossoms fall. The weather isn't supposed to be 100% great this weekend, but hopefully we'll make do. we're otherwise heading into the end of March here, and I want to squeeze in a couple more videos if I can, so expect me back here in the next couple of days, because I have another Am reading video that I want to make to complement the Friday Reads ones that I made earlier in the month, because I didn't in fact have time to mention all of the reading that I have been doing, because I started some new stuff, or I'm intending to, in the next couple days, so I'll try to carve out a little time to talk about those books as well. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.